So a review on these shoes has almost been a year in the making. If you couldn't tell, these are the Sportiva TX2 EVOs. They are the new version of the TX2s, an approach shoe from Sportiva. And when the TX2 EVOs came out, they came out with some features and some updates to the TX2 silhouette. And yeah, I got my hands on these a year ago, and I was trying to make a review way back in the summer of 2022, but I couldn't really put all my thoughts together. But now I finally felt like I've spent enough time with them to really talk about them and talk about what's good about them and talk about maybe what's not so good about them. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So for starters, let's go over some of the basic things that made the TX2 EVO different from the TX2. And the big one is that this is the leather version. So the TX2 EVOs come out with a synthetic upper and a leather upper. And I had the leather versions because they're going to be slightly more durable than a knitted upper. So I went with the leather, but that is also new for the TX2 EVO. So that is super nice to have a lightweight shoe with leather in it. The other thing that was kind of new and updated is actually this right here. So this red line, which is around the whole sole of the shoe, this makes the TX2 able to be resoled. And this is kind of a cool thing because not a lot of approach shoes are resolable. Sure, yes, you can get them resoled in certain places. We'll resole certain approach shoes. But this makes it super streamlined and easy to resole. Essentially, this is like a layer of like TPU or something to that matter. And you can basically take like a hot knife at a resoler and they will just peel this outsole out and you can slap a new one on super easy. A lot of these approach shoes go with more of like a cemented construction, kind of like climbing shoes in that matter, where when you put the glue on, you're putting the glue directly on the bottom of the shoe. And when you're trying to resole like an approach shoe, that kind of gets weird with some of the foam inserts that you have. So it makes it a little weird and not as ideal. Whereas this new platform makes it so these shoes are easily resoled. So that is super awesome to see. And it's now becoming something that Sportiva is kind of doing more with their approach shoes. There's a new version of the TX4 coming out this summer, and it has the same platform as this, making it so it's able to be resoled. So that is super awesome to see. And kind of dealing with the sole too, they went with a different compound. So the TX2 originally went with Vibram Mega Grip, whereas this one goes with Vibram Hydro Grip. And Hydro Grip is something that they've used before in other products. The Sportiva boulders are a good example of the use of that rubber. And in the boulders, it was awesome. They've been hard wearing and they've been really durable. And so they made the switch to Hydro Grip to the TX2 with a new kind of lug pattern. The TX2 did circular lugs, whereas this one goes with diamond lugs. I don't really know how big of a difference that is. Might create better traction just because you have more angular edges, and you kind of see this right here, this little nub right here. I'm pretty sure these kind of back lugs will go with the Sportiva's impact brake system. It's basically a lug pattern system that gives you better downhill performance. It's something that's pretty standard on all their shoes, and it is the same with the TX2s. And with this new outsole, you get a good, nice climbing edge, so you can use these to climb in. And they're relatively flat too, so if you're looking for a shoe that does not have like a heel, these are a good shoe. They don't really have a heel, so you don't trip on your heel, which I don't know how many of you do. Sometimes I do, but it's definitely nice to have this, more of like a less aggressive, more street shoe orientated version. And kind of going with this whole sole package again, what they did bring back was this bungee cord. The bungee cord allows you to bungee these two shoes together, so it's easier to put on your harness. So, whether you're climbing, like multi-pitch climbing, or you're just topping out of a climb, you can have these bungeed together, clipped on you. So then when you want to get out of your climbing shoes or you're going to walk down or walk off the climb, you always have these on you. So that is super nice. I also forgot to mention that with the bungee cord on the TX2 EVOs, it creates a direct path for water to get in. I found this out kind of not unexpectedly when I was out walking and I stepped through some puddles, and as soon as that bungee starts to get wet, because there's a direct cutout on the midsole and there's a direct line to it underneath the insert inside the shoe, yeah, your foot tends to get wet if you step through some puddles. So just be aware that with the TX2 EVOs, they are susceptible to getting wet internally just due to the bungee cord being there. So it's a weird quirk with the bungee cord. And they do come in at a lower weight too. They come in at 295 grams, which is pretty awesome for having a leather shoe being that lightweight. I mean, these things are super lightweight, and it's awesome to have that durability without the trade-off of weight. But I think they got to that weight with a certain couple of things. I think a big one was the new addition, the different type of midsole. This midsole is slightly different from TX3 or the previous TX2. Those midsoles have like a dense, like rubbery feeling midsole foam, whereas these are kind of like a almost styrofoamy. They don't feel exactly like styrofoam, but they feel cheap in a way. But I think all it has to do is that there's more air in it, and it's a lighter compound in general, and you can definitely tell it by the feel of it. But the other big sign of that there is a difference with the midsole is actually the wear. Not that these are wearing too terribly bad, but they definitely have worn faster than my TX3s. You can kind of just see, if I can find, yeah, right here. It's not very big, but you can kind of tell that the midsole is more prone to like snagging onto things. It's something that I've noticed with some of their trail running shoes as well, is that it's a certain type of midsole that, like, if you were to go bushwhacking and you go through a bunch of like bushes, those bushes might kind of start to tear through the foam. I don't know. I don't think it's structurally like any problem. Like, it's not gonna like break the integrity. But it's just something I've noticed, like aesthetically, they look more worn faster. And kind of going into that too, the whole worn faster thing, that does lead me to talk about the outsole. So, yeah. So the outsole is kind of a weird thing. Like I said, it did make the switch to Hydrogrip. And Hydrogrip is basically a compound that does better when it's wet. But it's also like a little bit denser, I think. I don't really know the difference between exactly, but I know like Vibram Mega Grip is a lot of more of a stickier rubber, and Hydrogrip is definitely a harder rubber. But the trade-offs is that this does better in a wet environment. But what's been kind of crazy to see is that I've already had some pretty significant wear on the outsole. And so if you can see, all these diamonds have that like little inner diamond as well. So those inner diamonds were on this section as well. And now they're practically almost gone. And that's kind of alarming in some ways, just because I don't know if Vibram changed their compound like chemistry, because the boulders that I have that also have Vibram Hydrogrip have lasted a long time without really losing what the tread pattern looks like. And I've had my boulders for like 2 years, and the tread is in great condition. I've had these less than a year, and I've walked far less in them than I have on my boulders, and they are showing more wear. And that's kind of crazy. And what I'll bring up real quick here is just for reference. This is my pair of the TX3s. I've had these TX3s for I think almost 2 or 3 years, and this is using Vibram Mega Grip. This is after like 3 years of use, and you can still see where some of the tread patterns are. Obviously they're worn down, but this is 3 years of use and a lot of miles in them. This is like less than a year of use and far less walking time in them. So that is alarming that they are wearing down that fast. Granted, though, you can resole them, which is nice, but also at the same time, Vibram Hydro Grip should be durable and should last a lot longer, and it is just kind of alarming to see that. I don't know if it really has to do with maybe the compound is slightly tweaked from the boulders, or maybe it's something to do that they're resolable, so it's a little bit thinner of a compound. I'm not 100% sure on what exactly it is. All I know is that it is slightly alarming, just because, like I said, I've only had these for less than a year. I mean, I think they released in like July of 2022, and I'm recording this in, was it April? Yeah, it's April. So I've had them less than a year, and we had winter, so I wasn't really using these a whole lot, and they wore down a lot faster. So that is kind of really alarming to see how much they've been wearing. Yeah, I mean, it's in the same spot as the TX3, but they're wearing down a lot faster. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense just because of the TX3s being Mega Grip, and Mega Grip should wear out faster because it is a stickier compound, and Hydro Grip is a harder compound. So yeah, that's kind of weird. Not a huge fan of that wear. But overall, for performance wise, they perform pretty good. They're very lightweight and sensitive, and that's where you are going to get that trade-off. I mean, if you have something that is pretty lightweight, you're going to have something that's pretty sensitive. Don't expect to get like a full platform off of these because they're pretty flexible. It's just the nature of a lightweight shoe. And sometimes that can be a problem or not. You're not really getting these shoes to really like have a platform on to climb. You're going to be using the friction of the rubber to smear if you're going to try to climb something with them. So just be aware of that. The leather is definitely nice to have, like I said, for overall durability and just durability in climbing areas. Leather is very good at resisting abrasion, and so that is super awesome to have with these shoes. And yeah, I mean, they're a great shoe, but I feel like the TX line of series of shoes for Sportiva are this weird hybridization of streetwear shoe and approach shoe. Like when you have something like the boulders, those are very much an approach shoe. They're a climbing orientated shoe. They're heavy, they're stiff, and they are capable of a lot. I mean, people aid climb in them. I've done static line climbing in them. They've worked great for that. And whereas like the TX3s are, again, kind of this weird hybridization of like approach shoe and streetwear shoe. I think the TX2s fall on that range a little bit more. They're still plenty capable, but they're definitely limited to the terrain. Like would I bring these out on a scree slope and for bouldering? No, I wouldn't. I've had enough times this past rock climbing season when I've gone down just like a trail that was kind of loosely packed with a crash pad on my back, and I just slid down the whole way. You definitely notice that there isn't a heel on these just because there's nothing to bite and you do a lot of sliding. And I just found that overall traction wasn't as great, which I don't know, like I said, I don't know if the diamond pattern has to do with that or if it just really does have to deal with a lack of a heel. I took my TX3s out in the same place, and the TX3s seem to do better. It might just be because the TX3s have like a slight heel, whereas these do not. But yeah, I mean, these definitely have their place. I think the place for the TX2s are definitely like the on-route shoe to either top out because they're just so lightweight, or they're a really sensitive like kind of climbing approach shoe, or I would do some hikes in them if I knew that the ground was pretty like packed and not loose and you're not going down a steep grade. Doing stuff like that, I think these are great just because like they're lightweight, you can easily set them on and off, they fit really good, but there are things that I think hold them back. But that again makes sense as everything in the TX line seems to do something different. The TX2s are the lightest weight ones, and they don't have the heel, but you get them better, like they can be on your harness and you don't really notice them, so that's the trade-off. And then like the TX3 is kind of the hybridization of like you get a little bit more hiking shoe features, but you still have like sensitivity, and you get a mesh upper, so you get breathability. And then the TX4s are just the TX3s but in the leather. And then you have like something like the TX guides, which are more of like your climbing orientated approach shoe. So it all kind of really depends. Like I said, I definitely feel like these more have a place as more like streetwear shoe for climbers, but they obviously still work really good in and for climbing. But I definitely think they have their limitations. So yeah, that is the La Sportiva TX2 EVO. If you guys have any questions about the shoes, make sure to comment them. I'll try to respond to them as quick as I can. I know I didn't cover everything, but that's why we have comments, so I can answer your comments and your questions. So yeah, so thank you guys for watching this kind of 1 season, 1 year review of the TX2 EVOs. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next one.